where we are now deep into the latest round of climate change talks, this time at a significant and new level. At this meeting, governments have on the table, for the first time, real negotiating texts which can serve as a basis to start drafting an agreed outcome in Copenhagen. From Bali, we are moving steadily closer to Copenhagen, where I'm sure history will be made. With only 200 days to go before then, the need to act remains urgent. But the past 100 days have seen many new developments which show that governments have recognized the urgency, that they wish to act, and Copenhagen is where they want an agreement to happen. The United States has clearly committed to a successful Copenhagen agreement and to a clean energy future. A greater political trust is emerging between the industrialized and developing world as US and other rich nation politicians are finally and vocally giving developing nations due credit for the significant climate change strategies they already have in place. Many national stimulus packages have now been launched that include green components, not least being those in China and South Korea. Internationally, the Major Economies Forum has been relaunched and has demonstrated a commitment to success at Copenhagen and to be a forum where positions could converge and contribute to an agreed outcome. Since I met many of you in Poznan, much progress has been made, also in the talks. Many gaps on practical issues have been closed, and governments have given important guidance on what a Copenhagen agreement must contain. We have more clarity and convergence on what we must do and why. We need progress now on who will act, how and when. Your objective as urban leaders is to ensure your cities and local governments have the abilities, capabilities and resources they need to meet agreed national targets and implement local mitigation and adaptation strategies. In Poznan, I described to you the 4 essential political areas of agreement which would be necessary to reach an ambitious agreed outcome in Copenhagen in December. In this context, let me review for you where we are on these 4 essentials and note the opportunities that are emerging in the use of national mitigation and adaptation plans to combat climate change. First, ambitious emission reduction targets for industrialized countries is a make or break prerequisite. Developing countries want industrialized countries to show leadership given their historical responsibility. We now have an almost complete list of industrialized nations' pledges to cut emissions after 2012, so governments can see clearly where they are in comparison to each other and build a higher ambition on that basis. Second, there must be clarity on nationally appropriate mitigation actions, the so-called NAMAs, by developing countries. Many developing countries are already implementing climate change mitigation actions. In Bali, developing countries indicated they were willing to undertake additional measurable, reportable, and verifiable mitigation actions, provided they get measurable, reportable, and verifiable finance and technology support from industrialized countries. The scope and scale of NAMAs has not yet been defined by the negotiations. But to my mind, they could include anything from voluntary renewable energy targets to boosting energy efficiency standards to reducing deforestation projects, provided the additional mitigation benefit can be measured, reported, and verified. What is clear is that NAMAs need to contribute to developing countries' sustainable development goals and boost their economic growth. They need to be a central element in developing countries' moves towards a sustainable energy future. Apart from the scope and scale of NAMAs, the negotiations also need to clarify how best to direct the financial and technological support towards the identified mitigation action, possibly under a central NAMA registry. And third, Copenhagen needs to mobilize very significant financial and technological resources to assist developing countries in their additional mitigation and adaptation actions. Significant public funding is essential, but highly unlikely to be sufficient to meet the needs for both mitigation and adaptation. Clearly, private finance must be attracted. Corporate and finance interest in the investment potential of underdeveloped urban centers in clean energy and technologies is clearly an area where public-private cooperation offers a great opportunity. Clarity on finance is still required, but I'm confident it will emerge in the course of this year. A big challenge is the final essential political prerequisite, namely managing all the resources out there towards the desired climate result. On the one hand, the developing countries wish to see funds that are agreed in a Copenhagen outcome come under the authority of the Conference of Parties to the UNFCCC, and all sides have an equal voice in their management. Industrialized countries, on the other hand, maintain that existing multilateral institutions and regional development banks have an important role to play in the governance of the generated finances. A middle ground has to be found, and I'm convinced that this can be done. One possible way is if developing countries recognize NAMAs and national adaptation programs of action, the so-called NAPAs, as vehicles to control the direction of financial support so existing institutions could continue to be used to channel resources. We are now at a critical stage where ways and means to unleash a new wave of finance and technology to combat climate change through new structures of national planning and governance are starting to emerge. At least half of the world's people are now city dwellers, consuming 80% of energy produced. Yet urban centers are also often the best placed with active and enlightened management to deliver rapid and effective action against climate change. It is essential that urban planning and efforts are locked closely into this emerging vision to encourage and then to respond to an ambitious Copenhagen outcome. Thank you.